like looking back, I think it was just like meant to be me and the baby, like my husband wasn't there. And if I needed him, I would have grabbed him, but like I just didn't need, and the nurse wasn't even in the room. Like it was just like a silent, peaceful, sacred time, like an hour or two that I had labored in the hospital like that. And that's all I needed in that time. And it was just kind of extra special. I have no regrets about, again, if I needed someone or I needed more support, I would have spoken up. But me and the baby in labor land were just, a really special part. So
Getting pregnant and giving birth are two of the most exciting things you can ever hope to experience in this life. The moment you think you could be pregnant, you're frantically searching for all the best information, which is why you're here today. I'm Stephanie King, and with my many years of experience as a professional childbirth educator, doula, and lover of all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, I'm here to make preparing for your birth enjoyable, empowering, and totally easy. Each week, I'll cover different topics, interview professionals, and get into the nitty-gritty birth stories from mamas just like you. And when you're ready for more, you can join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I take you step by step through exactly how to prepare your mind, body, spirit, and partner for a birth you love. So let's get started. Our birth story today is a little bit different, and it does include loss. So for moms who are completely uninterested in listening to that as you prepare for your birth, I want you to be aware of it so that as you listen, you understand that that is part of this story. Now, Sarah reached out to me with an incredible birth story that she called devastatingly beautiful. She had had a prior birth and then went on to have this pregnancy and this birth that did end with loss. And she also called it an extremely redemptive birth. And as we listen to this story today and you hear her walk through her decision making, her preparation, her birth of her baby, and how everything went, including the ending part here, it is devastatingly beautiful. I think that it was the perfect way to put it. So as you listen to this, I hope you do feel the positivity and the beauty of this birth story surrounding this sweet baby who was called home early, and also the beauty of the mother involved and how God came in and was part of the story. So with that, please enjoy today's special podcast. Today, I have with me Sarah. She's one of our My Essential Birth mamas, and she's coming here with a really special story. So before I say too much, I want Sarah to go ahead and introduce herself, and we'll kind of dive into her previous pregnancy, her previous pregnancies, and then kind of what this last birth looked like for her. So Sarah, with that, will you say hello to everybody, kind of introduce yourself, and then tell us a little about you?
sure thing. Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. As you said, my name is Sarah. I live in West Michigan with my husband and my son. I have a 17-month-old at home. I'm a dentist, so I took over my dad's practice with my sister, and then I really enjoy what I do. I actually love my job, and my husband's a builder too. So we're working parents, but I get some time at home. Yeah, and like as I said, this is my second pregnancy we'll be talking about today, about my son Benson, another baby I had, and just really excited to be able to share our story and kind of all that it meant to me too.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you're here and grateful that you're willing to share this because, as I said kind of before, just when we were chatting and on email, I think this is going to be such a blessing to women that hear this, to see it. The way that you described things was so beautiful that I think it'll just be such a benefit to other women. So should we talk about your first baby and kind of what that experience was like first, and then we can kind of lead into this last pregnancy?
Sure, yeah. That does kind of set up a lot, and I think it speaks to the meaningful second birth I had too. Again, and we have a sweet 17-month-old at home, and with him, I had a fairly nothing crazy in my pregnancy. We did learn at his 20-week ultrasound that he had a 2-vessel cord. So for people who don't know what that is, basically normally we have 2 vessels or like 2 arteries going into the umbilical cord, 1 vein coming out. I had 1 artery going in and a vein coming out. So they call that a 2-vessel cord. Not a major complication, but they just kind of look at the baby closely toward the end and make sure that he's growing and all is well. Why that's important is I really didn't want an induction with the baby. And I held out, through at like 39 weeks, they were like, oh, we can induce and, meet him early. And I was like, no. And then 40 weeks, I was like, no. And then 41 weeks, I was like, no. I went past term with him. And because of the 2 vessel cord, they're really like, we should induce past 41 weeks. And yeah, I guess medically wise, that it made enough sense to me, even though he was doing fine and all the things, but had an induction with him. And then overall, just unfortunately had like a really negative experience with that birth. It kind of came down to not just the induction that I didn't want, but when I was essentially ready to have the baby, like I had pushed and all these things, there was no provider there to come in. So they were like, yeah, why don't you just tell mom to like lay back and breathe through contractions and we'll be in when we can. And then an hour later, they come in and, 2 pushes and the baby was out. And looking back, it just felt like a very unjust thing to me that, I had to wait to push my baby. And of course, now what I know is I did not have to wait. I could have advocated for myself and been like, find someone to catch this baby. I'm pushing, I'm having him. All your body wants to do is to, push him out and meet the baby. And anyway, I oftentimes look back to and you don't want to have regrets, but it's like if I would have had a doula there to advocate for me, or if I would have known more about my rights there in the hospital, a lot of things would have been different. So thankfully, healthy baby, all was well kind of after that. But I knew the second time around, I really wanted things to be different. In fact, we'll kind of talk about providers, I'm sure, but I was like, I switched hospitals. I'm working with a midwife. I hired a doula, I got the birth course. Like I really wanted to prepare to know all the things I needed to know. And like I said, to make it a much different experience than I had the first time around.
Yeah. So let's dive into this last pregnancy then. So you got pregnant fairly close together. So talk about that and how that was for having a pregnancy that was so close together. I know that there are other moms that are interested in doing this or curious about it. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I had a fairly, I'll call it like a good postpartum with my first baby, meaning like, I recovered well and felt good. And I mean, he was a pretty easy baby. So I kind of joke that, oh, hey, we just got like talked into another one. But we always wanted our kids close together. So we were excited when we got pregnant again. I got pregnant 8 months postpartum. I didn't have a period postpartum, but I kind of like, I knew enough about my cycle. I guess it wasn't a cycle, but I knew enough about the signs to look for example, like my cervical mucus for ovulation, and kind of noted one day, and I'm like, this looks, like ovulation. And so we tried and yeah, we got pregnant. We were really excited because I hadn't had a period, as I'm sure some moms know, like, once you let your healthcare providers know, they kind of have to do what mine did is some HCG testing just to kind of see where I could be at. Even though, as you've pointed out before to your mamas, like I very much knew when conception was, like I knew when I ovulated, that was the whole point. So I had a pretty good guess date or like due date in mind. But anyway, we did some of the testing. And then I even had like, I think an 8-week ultrasound just to check in on things. And of course they confirmed the pregnancy and all had looked good then. I guess symptoms wise, I was fairly nauseous. I was really nauseous for my first baby. And in fact, for the second pregnancy, I was nauseous for like even longer. Fortunately, I wasn't much of like a vomiter, I guess, with the nausea, but just like really that low grade, like yucky feeling all day long, probably until like 16 or 17 weeks, which is kind of, I think, pretty, yeah, I know likely moving forward, that just may be how my pregnancies are, but you just get through it just like everybody does.
Right. Okay. Curious then, when they were dating, because this has me like very curious. So, when you ovulated, was their dating the way that they did the HCG and the ultrasound? Were they pretty close to what you had in mind?
They actually were. And we know at least too that like earlier ultrasounds are more accurate for at least some kind of guessing than later. Yep. But it almost was actually validation of like, yeah, like I told you, like, they were really, really close together. Like I think with using my ovulation date and it was probably like within a day.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, but if anything, I mean, I was ready to like, oh no, I know when I ovulated, like this is actually the accurate date. And they basically matched it with their measurements and stuff too. So it actually, like I said, was validating that it lined up with at least what I knew my body had done.
Yeah. Okay. And then how about your provider? So you said you had an OB with the first, you switched to a midwife. When you went looking for a midwife, did you ask around? Like, how did you find this midwife and what made you comfortable with this person?
Yeah, I mean, I had asked around kind of to moms, and I even know some L&D nurses that live, like we're kind of in a little bit of a bigger area, so switching hospital systems was just, like, either driving 10 minutes this way or 10 minutes that
Mm.
way, and, like, because of my first birth too, I did actually want, like, a bigger hospital system that I knew would have plenty of providers there, to attend to me as needed, essentially. And the midwife, I really just wanted someone with a little bit more of a holistic view of birth and things like that. So I did go, and in midlife or midwife fashion, I should say. My first visit with her was like 40 minutes. Like we just talked through things. Like she, just gave me information and asked through questions, like something I had never gotten from an OB. She just really wanted to get to know me and my pregnancy and my wishes, and that was even like the first visit. So that felt really comforting, and like, yeah, this is the extra attention that I was hoping to get with kind of, yes, a mid-level provider, but someone that I felt more comfortable moving forward. And I knew what questions to ask, like, hey, what are your like absolutes for an induction? Or, how far would you let me go? And I even asked some monitoring questions because I just like hated all the monitoring that I had my first pregnancy, like strapped up to so many things. And, anyway, I knew those questions to ask because of what I didn't love for my first, and I felt comfortable with her right away. I did see a few different midwives throughout I guess, my visits, but that didn't bother me as much because I know how that works. Of like, you don't know who will be there, to attend a birth anyway. So I kind of liked meeting multiple women.
Awesome. Okay, how about your birth partner? So, how was his support and what did that look like, especially switching from I would love to hear what was his experience with the first birth and how did he feel about you switching over to midwifery care and the birth course and all of that? Like what was his role here?
Yeah, like I said, my husband, he was kind of, when we had that, like, I'll call it hour with my first baby, where, I was just like extremely uncomfortable. Like, it just felt like, yeah, like mental torture too, I guess, not having that. And I think for him it was torture because he just got to like be there, I guess, for me physically, but like knowing how unjust the whole thing was. And he's a little bit on the quieter side, but he definitely had spoken up at that first birth of like, hey, is there someone on call? Like, hey, can we get someone in here? Just speaking up more and more. And I think moving forward with the second baby, he very much understood my kind of like my fervor for a different experience, and we did the course together. I really wanted him to watch the videos with me and kind of know. I listened to like all your podcasts, so I felt like I already kind of had like a lot of good information pre that, but I really wanted him to know like how we could make the new experience happen,
Yeah.
like he knew I wanted it, but like how do we make that happen? And I think for a dad that was really helpful of like, what does that look like? What can I do? And with him too, specifically, we didn't practice a lot of physical things, but I wanted him to know like some affirmations that I felt like were important to me, and just ways to support me almost like mentally more than the physically, and kind of explain to him too, why, because I think like maybe a lot of dads or even a lot of parents, he was like, well, why don't we just, for the first baby, like, well, why don't we just show up and like do what they say, and like we'll go from there. And we've really learned together, like, you don't have to do what you say, or you don't have to do what they say. You can make a lot of decisions, and how those decisions really affect a birth experience. And even kind of hearing some of our friends' birth experiences and things like that. Now he's like, oh man, she could have done this instead, or, they had to do this. And I'm like, yes, yes, he's
100%.
totally in
That's my
it.
husband
So
now. Yes.
yes. So he's of course been extremely supportive through everything, but he'll even say now, like, wow, I really understand like where you're coming from. And, I think that's all the more reason why he was so happy about the second birth we got to have too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What did your preparation look like then? It sounds like you guys watched the videos and he learned a lot of information and you guys communicated well. What else did you guys do? And what was your daily prep? What did that look like?
Yeah. So this second time around, with the help of the birth course, of course, I really wanted to focus on like the mental side, because I also want an unmedicated birth. I guess I haven't said that, but I really wanted just like a low intervention, unmedicated, kind of as natural as possible birth. And I knew that. I think I'm kind of like mentally tough, but I knew that I, wanted to really prepare the mental side, especially knowing physically what birth is like, having had a baby before. I at least knew like what to prepare for physically, but mentally, I'd never really gone into an unmedicated birth. So I should say this too. I had an epidural for my first baby. It really didn't work very well. And I know now, second time around, it really didn't work. Like it was the same to me. But all that being said, physically, I really love doing like the squats and your three exercises, just staying, really limber and strengthening my legs. I always like to be active, and that stayed true in pregnancy of just walks. And I did some more strength training this time around with this pregnancy. And then, I ended up having more of like a preterm baby, which we'll talk about. But so really toward the end, there were no like dates or red raspberry leaf tea or anything like that,
Right.
which I did that all on my first. But a lot of this was like, falling asleep to your affirmations track and really just kind of focusing on like the breathing and things like that I knew I would need for labor.
Okay. So, yeah, let's kind of get into your pregnancy and everything. Like, how did it look? What was it like? You mentioned something about your 20-week ultrasound. So,
Mm-hmm.
can you walk us through kind of your pregnancy and anything that looked a little strange or that was normal?
Yeah. Yeah, as mentioned before, the only thing kind of early on was just the fact that we had to do some HCG testing and of course, I've confirmed pregnancy at the 8 week, which was really, really exciting. At my 20 week, which is the typical anatomy scan, things overall, we had known it was a boy, so we got to confirm that, which again was exciting. And I remember the midwife saying after the scan, like, yeah, all looks really good. There's kind of one little thing that, we see on the anatomy scan today, and he had they call it like a dilation of his renal pelvis, so like a little part of his kidney that was kind of open wider than it normally would be. And what she said is like, this is really, really typical. It's actually one of the most common anomalies we see on a 20-week scan, especially in boys. They'll likely want a follow-up ultrasound and maybe like a month or 2 months or so, just to make sure that it's completely resolved. And I went home and I like looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, it does state that it's like super common, almost always resolve. And I remember I had a question for her of like, well, if it doesn't resolve and baby's born with like a dilated pelvis of the kidney or whatever, what does that look like? And she's like, oh, they just, monitor, make sure urinary output is good. Like oftentimes doesn't even affect quality of life. And I was like, awesome. Okay, sounds good. I think there's a lot of moms that have like little things they might see on a 20-week ultrasound that end up, either resolving or not meaning much. And I'm not much of an anxious mom, so to be honest, so I even was like, well, do we need a follow up ultrasound? Like classic second baby too. I was like, I don't, want to whatever go downtown to the hospital and do an ultrasound, like all of those things, but. It's funny, I actually canceled that ultrasound. It was supposed to be with MFM too, and that was kind of like weird to me, but and I remember talking to my midwife at the next appointment, and I was like, "Hey, I did cancel that ultrasound. Like, I just don't know. I just would rather not, if it's not needed." And she's like, "You should go and just make sure things are good." So I'm like, "Okay, I trust you." So it kind of got pushed back, and it wasn't until I was about 28 weeks that I had that ultrasound. Friday morning, went by myself. Just kind of doing the check in the box kind of thing. And I remember I'm not an ultrasound technician whatsoever, but I remember seeing on the scan, kind of just like a lot of these like really dark, like black areas. And I kind of know that black means like fluid on an ultrasound, right? And I was like, that kind of looks like interesting or weird but again, I guess I wasn't sure. And then I remember waiting in the room for a really long time. And then when a doctor did come in, it was like the whole group of doctors. Like there was like 4 doctors that came in. And I was like, this is not good. And that's when they kind of let me know, like, hey, we know why you're here today, but kind of just the bad news of like things had gotten like incredibly worse. Like essentially that kidney that wasn't working well, like really wasn't working well. Fluid had backed up, and baby, he wasn't able to kind of process, right? Like kidneys do process the fluid all over the heart now, fluid all over the lungs, things not developing well. And it sounded like really, really severe. And I was, of course, like completely blindsided. And the MFM doctors, even too, they were like, we looked back at the 20-week, like we also completely agreed with the way it was read. Like we've never seen a change like this in 8 weeks, especially so much later in the pregnancy. A lot of times if that were to happen, it seems like you would catch earlier signs. And I didn't know it all because the baby was growing fine. Heart rate was always fine. Movement was always fine at my visits. So this was, of course, like a big kind of devastating thing, and called my husband. They wanted me admitted to the hospital, and I was like, "Can I just go home, at least to talk to him?" And we did end up going back that day. And essentially, what they wanted to do was just like a fetal MRI and fetal EKG and just things to like double check everything. But after all that testing, they kind of came back with like, yeah, all that did was confirm that things are just really bad. And unfortunately, there's kind of like no treatment or like no intervention that could even make things better. They offered to kind of like do a steroid shot and help with his lungs, but I was like, well, if you're telling me though that like the heart is almost kind of the probably the limiting factor right now, I was like, I just don't like I don't want that either. And so we kind of just went home now knowing that our baby was not going to survive to term, even though I had like a live, moving baby in my tummy. Yeah, just totally kind of course rocked our world. And this is when it also kind of began to hit like, if we're just kind of essentially waiting now for baby to pass and have like a stillbirth is essentially what the plan was. It just like this dream birth I had of like very low intervention and unmedicated and like just all of these things going into labor naturally, like not having an induction was my number one goal. Like even with everything else, I just really wanted to experience going into labor naturally. And I kind of just felt like that was all lost, at least in my head. And of course, being sad about everything else. And almost felt that little bit of selfishness of like, feeling like I was going to lose the birth I wanted. But it was real, that's how much it meant to me that with everything else too, I felt like, oh man, now I like still have to give birth to this baby. That was like my initial thought. And of course, looking back now, it all comes back to like I got to give birth to that baby, and how special it all was. But that's kind of the how we learned the bad news story.
Yeah. And are you willing to share kind of what conversations you and your husband had, what was going on in your mind when you did kind of take that home and how you dealt with that and then during those next couple weeks before you gave birth to that baby?
Yeah. It's such a weird thing. I mean, that's him and I really struggled with just like how to like move on with your daily life. They kind of call it like anticipatory grief. Like
Mm.
I was reminding myself that I, still had an alive baby that I got to carry and then I got to experience. But again, if I'm being really honest, like pregnancy just like no longer was fun. Like now, like every little ache and pain. And I mean, again, at this point, I was into my third trimester. And I just felt really kind of physically defeated by pregnancy too. I think pregnancy is hard for any woman. And what makes it worth is like having a baby to bring home, at the end of the day. And again, if I'm just being honest, those negative feelings just like really flooded of like, man, I just don't want to be pregnant anymore. Like I just want to be done with this then. If I don't get the baby, like I kind of just want to be done. Um, and Riley and I, of course, we've shared with our, friends and family, and we really did just feel like very covered in prayer at that time. I mean, what we were doing was praying for a miracle of just like trying to yeah, just to plead with God of like, if you can fix something, if you can heal him, of course that's what we want. And MFM too, they wanted like now weekly ultrasounds. And honestly, I was like, again, ultrasounds, I was like, can we do every other week? And I think they were probably wanted to just check in on especially like vitality or like life of the baby, but I just didn't want like a weekly reminder of how things were going. And so we did kind of have like another 2-week one that was right around Christmas. And yeah, nothing had changed, unfortunately. Like things hadn't gotten extremely worse, but they definitely hadn't gotten better. That's another thing. It was right around Christmas too. So it was just like a tougher time for my family of, trying to be in a celebratory mood. And we did have a little one at home, like, which of course was the joy of our life and really what got us up and kept us smiling and kept us laughing, our little boy. But yeah, it was just hard. And actually what we did is, and again, we were kind of preparing for a stillbirth. So we listened to stories of other families that had delivered, with stillborn or had infant losses and just tried to kind of glean some insight and some wisdom from them of how to make it the best experience, you can. For example, people are like, take pictures, like take so many pictures, like before baby, during the birth, after with baby, like you could not take enough photos and videos because, well, yeah, because that's the only time you're ever going to get with them too. But it was other families that really helped at least support us too and give us kind of some hope, I guess, for the situation.
Okay. And then what happened during those next couple of weeks? And then let's go on to your birth, the birth of this baby.
Yeah. Like I had said, we had got through Christmas and New Year's and that one other check, that one other ultrasound in the next 2 or 3 week window. And again, not much had changed. I mean, I felt the baby throughout all of that, of course. So I kind of felt like I would know too. Like, I mean, maybe it's easy to say, but like if you don't feel the baby for 6, 8, 12 plus hours, I knew I would have known to go in and check things out, but I was always feeling them. It was really, really special. I guess kind of getting into then the labor, or like I guess, yeah, the labor and the birth. We it was really early January. New Year's had passed and everything, and we had gone to a friend's house and had some dinner, and I came back and it was maybe like 8 o'clock at night. And I remember going to the bathroom and, basically kind of like wiping and seeing like what ended up, I think, being like some bloody show, like even a little bit of like kind of mucusy. So not like bleeding. And I was like, that's interesting. And like 30 minutes later, I started having contractions, which I was like, this is also interesting. I mean, the doctors did say, like, if you do have any bleeding, cramping, anything like that, of course, call, which is like, they would say that. But I was like, let's see where this goes. Like, this is pretty interesting. So had really minor contractions, but they were always fairly close together, meaning like 2 to 3 minutes.
Hmm.
And I had them throughout that night, very minor, like not anything I had to stop what I was doing. And then I did let my husband know. I was like, hey, just so this is kind of going on, having some contractions. I don't even think I had reached out to my doula or anything at this point. Ended up having them throughout the night. I was able to sleep, but I remember when you kind of like wake up drowsy, I remember experiencing still some contractions. And then still the next morning, we ended up going to church that Sunday morning, and I was having contractions all throughout church, and, still contractions. And then at noon, that was when my husband was like, well, why don't we call? And I was like, I don't want to call. Like, I just did not want to go into the hospital unless this was labor, like, unless I was having this baby. And like a lot of your moms share, like I was in denial because I just didn't want it to be true. I didn't want to be so excited if it weren't true. I did, kind of to appease my husband, I did end up calling that afternoon and talked through some questions, with the nurse, triage on the phone. And then she's like, okay, well, by the answer of all these questions, we do recommend that you come into L&D. And that's when I was like, okay, I hear the recommendation. Like, I'm not going to come in right now. Like, I'm going to wait. And she was like, okay, da, da, da. And I was like, I put anything down in your notes that you need to, that I'm, refusing you the recommendation, but I just wanted to at least call, and like, we're going to wait. And she's like, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she kind of knew my situation too. And from the notes, and she was like, okay, I understand. Please call us when you're ready. And I would say contractions were getting stronger, like a little bit over time in intensity. And because, like I said, because they were always pretty close together, it was kind of hard to know if it was picking up that way. Like they really were, like 2 minutes apart. Like they were very constant, but I was waiting for them to be like really intense. We went throughout the rest of the day, basically, same thing. It's funny looking back now, my husband has like pictures of me. I didn't realize on like at like 3 p.m. that I'm like eyes closed, like kind of breathing through a contraction. And looking back, we're like, yeah, okay, things were picking up. But it was around like dinner time that my husband, again, made a really good point of like, hey, if you think we're going to go in tonight, like, let's at least like get a family member over here, like once we put the baby to bed, just so we're not calling family at like 2 a.m. Right. Which was a really good plan. And I think by that time I had known like these obviously are not petering out. They're only getting stronger. We will likely go in tonight. So we had his sister come in and stay with the baby, which I'm grateful that we had family around that were kind of like at beck and call, could come and help us. Nothing else had really changed. It's not like I had more like bloody show or mucus or anything like that, just contractions that were really picking up. And now I had to like pause, stop where I was doing, breathing through them. Yeah, things that were increased to enough. And I remember on our way to the hospital, I think it was now like 9 p.m. So it's been like 24 hours of labor contractions, that on the way to the hospital, I had a contraction. I was like, yeah, it's really good we're going in,
Mm-hmm.
like, which again was validating and good. And I think we had called the hospital, just letting them know that we were on our way. But I felt good about going in. I just really remember that full 24 hours of like, I am not, like, I really don't want to go in unless I wanted to be a labor at home for as long as possible, for sure. Okay, so yeah, we get there, triage. I actually called, like, one of my friends is an L&D nurse there, and I had let her know I was going in, and she's like, like I'm there, so she wasn't even on shift, but she came in just to be with us, which was really special. She walked us right to triage too and kind of like handed us off to a nurse of like, hey, see you upstairs. They did check me at triage, and I was 4 centimeters dilated and pretty effaced. I think it was like 80 or 90%, something like that. So that was also validating. I mean, just because of like the preterm situation I was in. I'm at 31 weeks right now, by the way. 31 weeks. Numbers are numbers, but at least I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. Obviously, my body is working toward labor, right? And they had monitored my contractions. And it's funny too, like looking back, like the fact they monitor, like, yep, you're having contractions. And I'm like, why do they monitor a mom that knows they're having contractions? I don't know, but it's just like what they're used to doing. But that just kind of shows like, okay. And babies, they check baby's heart rate. Like I had been feeling him the whole time, but he was still alive too. So they were about to go like get me up into an L&D room. And that's the other thing too. I remember that it was an OB who had came down, and because of my situation, they kind of called him or like her like a triage specialist or something. But technically she was the one that checked me just to get me rolling. And I remember her saying like, okay, well, like get some IV fluids started and like get you upstairs and da da da. And I was like, IV fluids, like, could you tell me more? Like, why do you think? And she's like, well, normally fluids will kind of just like slow down contractions a little bit or something like, and I was like, slow down contractions? Like, why are we trying to slow down contractions? Like, I know you're like, normally your 31-week moms will likely, like, obviously you want to slow down contractions or stop them, but like, that's not the situation I'm in. And I mean, I don't want the fluids. And she was like, okay, I understand, just stay hydrated. And I was like, because my goal too was to not be like hooked up to anything. I mean, why would I want to be hooked up to an IV? Especially if it's really not important. So I just share that because that was like a really good, but maybe small, but maybe not example of like how I learned that I could just like say no or, advocate for myself in a way that if it's something that I really didn't think was necessary or just asking that extra question was like, yeah, I didn't need to be hooked up to anything. And you helped me so much with that, Stephanie. So thank you. Um, we got up to our room and, they kind of put us in a nice little corner all by ourselves. And that nurse friend that I had mentioned, she sat with us and just really reviewed the birth plan of like things I did want, did not want, what our wishes with the baby. So we had even like before I was in labor and after maybe like a week or so before this, we had met with a NICU doctor, like a neonatologist, just to kind of confirm some things. So like essentially like if baby were to be born alive, which was honestly unlikely too, but if he were, we just wanted to know like intervention, no intervention with him, with the baby. And we had a really compassionate, but really honest, NICU doctor too, that looked over everything and was like, I mean, yeah, there's no zero in medicine, but like there's essentially 0% chance that this baby survives no matter what. And he agreed that the most loving thing we could do is just to keep him in our arms, not like be rushed off by strangers and hooked up to things. And, kind of as like devastating as that was, it also gave us so much confidence that it was the right thing to do. Is like once he was born, right to mom and dad, only mom and dad, like nothing else needed for the baby. And that we just we would have gotten to enjoy that time with him. So I mentioned that because like that's just another thing that we clarified with the nurse. And I, said the unmedicated thing of like, I'm not interested in epidural. I really want to just be, moving around and laboring here. And she was like, okay, sounds good. At that point too, we called our doula. I had kind of been updating her, but we called her. Baby was at -2 station at this point too when I was checked. And it was kind of with that information that the doula was like, okay, like get settled in, it could be a really long night. Like maybe you guys should try and get some rest. With baby where he is too, she gave me some exercises about like kind of like -2 station exercises or movements, positions, I should say. But she was like, maybe I should still just hang back. I don't want to come too early. And I was kind of like, okay. And honestly, I think I was downplaying my contractions a lot too, because I was like, I don't think it's going to be that long of a night. Like, I don't know. I just had like this gut feeling that things were progressing and I'd already been in labor for so long. So, but I was like, okay, like no problem. I really was okay with that. So my husband took her kind of seriously and like laid down, just tried to rest his eyes. It was probably like 11 p.m. by this point. But the nurse, I was like, I'll rest, but like, at least like, let's just get in a position that feels good and like would move labor along. So she kind of hooked me up with like a little ball and I got into a side lying position. And then she came back 30 minutes later and I did kind of some like hands and knees, kind of like a resting position. And then 30 minutes later, she came back too and switched me to like kind of I guess the third position was another type of side lying, like hip opener kind of thing. And this whole time through those exercises, I was just kind of like silently laboring. Like I remember like breathing, doing some moaning, like open mouth. And this was like definitely when I was in labor land. Like looking back now, I don't even know what I was thinking about other than just being like extremely focused. I was not in pain. I very much felt the intensity of the contractions, but I was like just at so much peace and what I was doing and kind of my mindset too. After that third position, so let's say it's been about like an hour and a half, I remember kind of being like, I need to like get up. Like I need to like stand up and do some different movements. And then all of a sudden I felt like I like really had to go to the bathroom. And I was like, okay, I kind of might know like what's going on here. But I did go to like the bathroom. My husband helped me walk over to the toilet. And then I remember sitting down in the toilet and I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt like I was going to pass out. Like I felt just like extremely nauseous and dizzy all at once. And then I told my husband I was like, go grab the nurse, go grab Sydney. Like, let's check things out. And she came in and saw me. And she was like, yeah, let's like, if you want to, let's maybe check your progress and see what's going on. So I went back to the bed to kind of get in some more positions, but then someone did come in and check me and they're like, yeah, you're at a 9.5. I can feel your like bulging bag of water. So my waters had not broken yet. And the provider, this was like the same OB again too. The provider was like, I can like break your bag of waters. And I think this baby is going to be born very soon, no matter either way, but I can break your bag of waters. Things might happen even faster, or we can keep rolling with what we have. And honestly, this is in my head too, because I was at 31 weeks. Like, I didn't know if this baby was 3 or 4 pounds. Like, I just didn't know exactly what to expect. And she almost said it in a way of like, because the waters were right there, like if we break it, baby could just be like born too. I don't know. Maybe that was like in my head. Like, and being preterm was kind of weird, but I ended up being like, okay, well, let me think about it for a minute and breathe through some more contractions and kind of talk to my husband. And I just decided to have the waters broken. Especially looking back now, it's probably like my one regret, and I'll tell you why. But so the waters were broken, and by that point I was at a 10. She like checked me again. She's like, you're at a 10 too. They broke the water, and my contractions just like stopped. Like, and knowing what I know about birth and labor too, like I think it was one of those things, like I was in the zone. I was so comfortable, like in labor land. And then now like everything's wet and I'm in a weird position. And like, I think I just like my body no longer kind of felt like that safety, and I've learned that from you too. Like stalls can be normal, but also like our body needs to feel like safe to kind of keep labor going. Anyway, contractions had just like stopped. And I never had that like, oh my gosh, I need to push feeling. I mean, I didn't at this point either, which I thought I was kind of expecting. So I almost felt awkward of like, well, I'm obviously not going to push unless there's contractions going on. So, but I will be honest, the team was great. They're like, nope, listen to your body. You're good. Like, there's no rush. Like, do what you need to do. But of course, they were kind of starting to get some things around in the hospital room too. I remember kind of like moving to hands and knees, standing up a little bit. Like, I just knew movement would like get the contractions kind of going. Like, maybe baby needed to settle in a little bit too. And it did. Like, they picked back up. And I still wasn't feeling that like major urge to push. And what I know now is that like baby was still fairly high, like not like as high as he was, but he wasn't like right there. And she kind of like after a little while of not really feeling the urge to push, she kind of felt again with my permission. And she's like, yeah, baby's still high. I think we really actually kind of have to push him down. And I was like, okay. So I kind of started doing some pushing like efforts that I didn't during contractions, of course, but not like, oh my gosh, I need to push. But I did, like, I started to feel the baby then move down to like okay, now I got to push, So
Right.
I think that was just, I guess, part of maybe breaking the waters early, but also, I mean, baby just like really hadn't descended, I guess, as much. And maybe that was part of being 31 weeks too. But it was also this point that I had the like pretty bad labor shakes. I had the shakes my first baby, and I was thinking maybe it had to do with like the Pitocin or the epidural or something like that. But again, now I know it's like, nope, even with an unmedicated, like nothing in my system, I was still shaking. But I knew what to expect. It was really like my legs that were so shaky. And so I really had to get them into a position that I felt like more stable. And I delivered my first baby with a squat bar, like squatting on the bed, but with a squat bar. And I really liked that. So I was kind of like making progress with the baby, but then I was like, wait, my legs are way too shaky. Like, grab me the squat bar. So they did, brought it over. I knew just what to do. Got up on the squat bar, and I mean, a few more pushes with that, and the baby was out. So I probably pushed for like 30 minutes, I think, and really kind of had to push from higher too. But being so mobile and unmedicated and all the things and having doing it before, I felt like, yeah, hopefully I was pretty efficient at pushing too, and all was good there. Yeah. So yeah, we chose not to monitor the baby throughout the entire labor. We knew that the stress of labor could kind of be what that he might not make it to the whole thing. And we were like, we're just going to meet him how we meet him. Like, even if we get a heartbeat, 5 minutes before he comes out, like, it might not be the same when he comes out. So I do remember, after he was delivered, like, we saw his little hand move and saw a bunch of facial expressions and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's alive. This is amazing. And that was just really, really special too, that we like immediately got to know that, he had made it through. And, baby, of course, went right to my chest, like with my husband right there with us. He cut the cord, which was special. And yeah, I mean, honestly, they didn't even like come over and wipe him or anything. Like, they did not touch him. Like, it was all messy and stuff, but we didn't care at all. Like, we just got to hold him and, see his little faces that he was making. And, yeah, he came out, 6 pounds, 15 ounces too. He was almost 7 pounds,
At 31
which,
weeks.
yes, which
Wow.
like was the nature of what was going on, all that fluid. It's called
Yeah.
hydrops, but he was filled with more fluid than he should have. But really what it actually looked like is he was just like a term baby, like a
Wow.
7 pound, like he wasn't like, yeah, I mean, he just looked like a term baby. Like, it looked like it was just like the pudgy fat that they get on at the end of end of their term. So that was just like a little sweet mercy in the whole thing too. I was like, oh my gosh. And then also I'm like, I just pushed out a
Yeah.
7 pound baby,
Right.
like, not that that is like the badge of honor, but it's like, it really felt like, again, a normal birth experience. And then also why, like, yeah, I mean, that's a normal sized baby to get a normal kind of experience with. So that was just kind of really fun and special too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll like probably keep going on and on with talking, but I just wanted to pause there and at least, see if you had any follow-up questions, or I can also keep going too.
Yeah. I think I'll have you just keep going. I feel like, yeah, the story is special and perfect the way it is. And if I have questions after, I'll do it after.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
So like I said, we got to just hold him, and we knew that it would likely just be, minutes that he survived, if at all. And, we just cherished those minutes, of course, and, we could kind of tell when he had passed. But we still just were loving on him and staring at him and, his hands, his feet, all of the things. I held him in my arms again without anything being taken away or touched for like a long time, like at least an hour. The kind of unfortunate part of they had a lot of difficulty delivering the placenta. And the reason is because of baby's hydrops, like even just the amniotic fluid and all of that, like it just wasn't kind of what a normal healthy baby would be. And so when the placenta was coming out, they gave me a lot of time, like before doing anything, to just see what would happen. But after like 45 minutes, they're like, okay, we need to kind of see what's like to help this along. And the placenta, it was just kind of coming out in pieces, like it was like shredding. And again, they said that was related to babies, the kind of the issues with the baby. So that was pretty uncomfortable because they tried to like really physically try and like sweep out, the placenta. And again, it was just breaking apart so much that they weren't getting it all. And they quick did an ultrasound chair side and was like, there's a lot of placenta left still, like, and they really tried too. Like that was by far the actual most like painful thing of the whole experience. especially to like, because it's like something being done to you, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
birth can be uncomfortable and very intense, but them really like try to sweep out my uterus like that with, of course, like no medication whatsoever. I mean, that's when I was kind of drawing the line of like, this is like suffering now,
Right.
like, thank you for trying, but like, I have my baby, like, this is all too much. Um, and I mean, the doctors understood, and they were like, unfortunately, I mean, that means that we're going to have to take you to the OR and like basically, yeah, have the rest of the placenta removed. And out of the entire labor and birth experience, this is like the first time I cried of like, oh, like, and even the doctor was like, you just did this whole thing without a touch of medication. Like, I don't want to put you through any more, like, like any more pain. Um, and I knew because I had had a friend that had like retained placenta, like went home with some placenta, and her experience and how stressful and negative it all was. I knew it was very important to get all of the placenta out. So I was like, okay, like, I just, having limited time with the baby that you won't be able to bring home, I think it was just devastating to be like, I have to leave the baby. And I remember asking too, like, how long will I be gone for? And they're like, well, it won't take very long in the OR, but people recover. Like, it could be an hour, it could be 5 hours. Like, we just don't know. And they said they had to do general because hadn't had an epidural, and that, yeah, general was the option. I was like, oh my gosh. Um, so anyway, I came to terms with it. I knew it was the right thing and I knew it was needed. And that's the other thing too. Like, I'm sad that happened, but I at least, like, I don't have any regrets of like, it happened. It did. That's what was going on. They really did try to do it without the OR, and it was just part of our story with the baby's health, that the placenta was just not going to come out the way that our body wants it to. So anyway, I was like, okay, well, like, let's go now. Like, I just like was like, let's get this over with. And so we did. They wheeled me right down there, in and out. I mean, of course, 2 hours to you under general is like 2 minutes. Like, you don't know,
Mhm.
you don't
Mhm.
know. But I did wake up, and they said it was only like 45 minutes to an hour recovery. I was up. They wheeled me back to baby, and I got him right back in my arms. And I mean, I felt completely fine. Like, I actually felt amazing. Like, I wasn't drowsy. Like, I wasn't, my body didn't hurt. Like, I, down there in my pelvic area, like, I hadn't torn it all or anything. So I just felt really comfortable. And so I'm very grateful for that, at least, that even though that had to be done, like, I recovered quickly, like, thank you, Lord, and was able to be right back with my baby. And thankfully, I didn't know that I was gone for 2 hours, like, yeah. And my husband had some time with Benson too, just to kind of have some one on one time, which was really sweet. His parents had come over and they got to meet him during that time too. So it all just at least worked out well in that way. Um, and yeah, that was at least kind of part of the story, but I have felt great since then. Um, from then on too, it was just kind of like having our special time with Benson in the hospital. Of course, holding him in pictures, and we did have a photographer come and took a lot of really, really sweet pictures. Our doula had known someone. I should say this too, I guess. Our doula missed the birth, obviously. My husband, when they checked me and I was 9.5, that's when he was like, called the doula quick and was like, hey, she's like, really close. I guess get here when you can. And she was there for me during like kind of the attempt to deliver the placenta and things. So that was good. But and the doula too, she was like, ended up being really upset that she missed it. She felt like so sorry. But like, looking back, I think it was just like meant to be me and the baby. Like, my husband wasn't there. And if I needed him, I would have grabbed him. But like, I just didn't need, and the nurse wasn't even in the room. Like, it was just like a silent, peaceful, sacred time, like an hour or two that I had labored in the hospital like that. And yeah, I guess, like I said, just looking back, I mean, it was like just me and him, like just me and Benson. And that's all I needed in that time. And it was just kind of extra special that, um, yeah, that I guess it was such like an intimate, sacred time with him too. I have no regrets about, again, if I needed someone or I needed more support, I would have spoken up. But me and the baby in labor land were just, a really special part. So,
Yeah, I thank you for sharing your story. I have been really impressed. I'm like trying to hold back my own emotions and allow you to impressed with the way that you're able to share this in such a
mhm.
beautiful way. I can tell that you've been through it and worked through it and felt a lot of it, and the way that you're able to say it, I think is just really wonderful. And I think it gives a lot of, I don't know what the word is. I think it gives a lot of respect to your baby and the time that you had with him. And it's interesting to hear a story like this and just feel so much love, to feel, even though there is loss involved, there's just so much love and beauty to it. It does make me a little curious about the experience that you went through and this birth, because you talked about how the first birth was very difficult or not exactly what you were looking for. Did you find that even with this loss, that was healing to do it this way? Was there any point where you're like, actually, maybe the epidural would have been the way to go for me mentally or emotionally? Or
Mhm.
do you feel like working through that was actually part of the healing that needed to take place as you gave birth to and said goodbye to your baby?
Yeah, I mean, it totally was. Like, it totally was. I mean, that's what's so weird to say, like, I had my dream birth even though, we had our loss and I wasn't able to take him home. But, like, there was so much redemption in that, and I mean, I still can't believe I was able to do it, and not, like, meaning out of my own strength, but, like, I'm a Christian. I believe that God was present through this entire story, and just the fact of, like, going into labor naturally, number 1. What? Like, what? I got to do that with an alive baby, and even at 31 weeks, and have, like, a fairly typical early labor and, active labor, all of that. And then, just having prepared and knowing what I knew, about what to expect that second time around. Yes, being able to, kind of do it unmedicated and really have the exact, like, just silent, not in the hospital for a long time, no interventions. I mean, I wasn't hooked up to anything, like, not one thing, because they weren't monitoring my contractions, they weren't monitoring baby, which I know that's a kind of a special circumstance with my case, but I mean, that is, like, exactly what I was hoping for. And there is just, I mean, there is so much beauty and redemption in this experience. And that's part of why I like to share it, because of how grateful we got to have that. And, you kind of asked about my husband before. I think him, seeing this birth and the labor and just the experience we got to have, even in a hospital. I mean, now I feel like I almost like have this view of hospital birth that's really, because I had actually, like, considered a home birth too, with the more and more I was learning. This was right before we kind of learned about baby. And I was looking at, like, home birth midwives, and, like, was about to, start contacting some people. And then, I guess it is good I didn't, because I think it was the right thing to do to have the hospital support there with his condition. But it just, I mean, truly, like, the best and worst day of my life,
Mhm.
like, the nurse friend that was there present through all of it. She kind of actually, I'm, like, stealing that from her. She's like, it was, like, the best day ever and the worst day ever. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of was. And that's really hard to describe, or to, I guess, to understand. But, and I just kind of feel like only the Lord could bring so much beauty in, like, a devastating time like that. And my husband and I are, like, I mean, we're just so grateful that, that's just how it happened for us. And it is easier to see some of the beauty and positivity in this story. And even without my first birth, I don't think the second birth would have been, it wouldn't have been that. So you just think of all of these things and all the factors that play into our story. And I know that there will be such a testimony, not just for me and my husband's story, but that this baby will really make a difference to hopefully a lot of people too. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you shared that. I think that's something I see now as I get older more than ever, that God is in the details and he
Hmm.
cares about us personally. And so he can touch us personally with those tiny blessings. So those things that were important to you specifically, that he knew would be important to you, that you could look back on with joy and love and admiration, those were included in your story as like just a gentle
Hmm.
gift of like, I'm here, I see you, I love you. And
Yes.
I love that. I love that you include that because it's so important. It's so part of everything in this life is for us to be able to recognize those moments and to see them for what they are. So
Hmm.
I'm really grateful you share that. Just it's just all the little things as you were sharing, and those are those sprinkled blessings that you get to enjoy. even having,
Yes.
that blessed time with your son afterwards where he was alive and you could have those
Mhm.
moments and hold him. And that is a blessing, is, hearing your story and what you were supposed to expect and all of that. So I just think that's
Yeah.
so beautiful. I'm so grateful that you've been here to share that with everyone today. Before we jump off, just kind of as a final thought, is there anything that you would like to share with women who may be coming up to something like this, who may be dealing with this or find out sometime during their pregnancy that they may have something similar happen? Is there any advice
Mhm.
or wisdom that you would share with them?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, is being a part of the course too. We have our Facebook page, and when I first kind of learned about our situation, and I was actually like really close to maybe like posting something on the page of like, hey, any like lost mamas out there? I don't know. I just felt like kind of so negative, and I almost reached out to you personally of like, can I post that? But really, what I was looking for is like, is there anyone else that has these goals and dreams? Because we're a special group too. It was my dream birth, and again, like, God was so good to me and to allow all those little details, but some mom might not care that they were induced or that they had an epidural, and that's totally fine, of course, but I knew that we had a special group of people that really cared about that, um, and yeah, I guess I was just looking for like, okay, not other even other lost mamas, but like lost mamas who want low intervention and more of like a, kind of natural birth. Um, and so anyway, I guess what I'm saying is that it is, I think it is obviously it is possible. It's something that happened to me and I think things worked out like, just right. But just know that if, you do have a baby that is yeah, that is not going to make it to term or even once they are born, is not going to survive, you still get to birth the baby. You still get to have that experience and thinking of it like that instead of having to, like I initially did when I heard our bad news. Only us, like only we as moms get to experience that with our baby. And it really doesn't even matter how they end up coming into this world, as long as it's something that, you feel really good about and at least feel involved in and advocated for. I think that that's just the most important thing. So don't think that all gets thrown away if there unfortunately ends up being some bad news with your baby, like there was for us. I would just encourage you to at least do what you can, even if it's the littlest things of, I don't want that IV fluids or something, you got to still make the choice and you don't lose all your choices, even if you are preparing for a loss. Um, and Stephanie, too, I guess I just would like to say it really is like, women like you that share their knowledge and that are able to also share the knowledge of other women with the birth stories that even got me to this point. Like you are part of those details that God included in this story, because if I didn't have you, I mean, truly, if I didn't have you in this podcast, I would have never had the birth that I had with Benson. And so again, things are just working out just the way that they were supposed to. But thank you for the work that you do and all the moms that, yeah, support other moms in this journey too, because we really need that. We don't really have society and like culture to always put that on us, but we have special people like you, and I'm just really grateful. So thank you,
Thank you, Sarah.
thank you.
If you loved what you heard today, the very best way to support this podcast and help other moms to find it is to leave a quick review. I read one at the beginning of the episodes, and I would love for yours to be next. And if you're ready for even more pregnancy, birth, and postpartum goodness, come join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I will hold your hand and walk you through pregnancy and birth step by step so you're totally prepared for a birth you'll love. See you next week.